What happens when a bakery chain's CEO trades his corner office for flour-dusted aprons and hears his own manager tear down the very worker keeping the place afloat? York Ellis had inherited the bakery chain from his mother 3 years ago. She'd built it from a single corner store into a 5-location business across the state. York had grown it even further, streamlining supply chains, updating branding, and striking deals with local farms. From the outside, things looked solid. But lately, he'd been getting strange signals. Online reviews mentioned long lines, rude service, and once, a customer even wrote, "The soul of this place has left." That one stuck with him. He didn't want to rely on district managers sugarcoating things. Most of the current store managers had been hired after his mother passed, and York had never met them. The company had grown fast, and he'd become a name on checks, not a face in the kitchen. So he decided to go undercover. He picked the third store, the one in Millhaven, for a 1-week trainee shift. It was far enough from headquarters that no one would suspect anything. The store had been underperforming for 2 quarters, and the manager, a man named Craig, had recently fired 2 part-timers, blaming lack of hustle. York wanted to see for himself. His disguise was simple but effective. He shaved his beard, dyed his hair a dull brown, wore fake glasses, and used the name Ben. He showed up on a quiet Monday morning with a fake resume and a temp agency contract set up by his assistant. None of the staff had met him before. There were no CEO portraits on the walls, and York had never posted his face online. Craig, the manager, barely looked at him. "All right, Ben, apron's over there. Don't mess with the ovens unless I tell you to. You'll be shadowing Gwen." Gwen Saunders, a slim woman with tired eyes and hair pulled into a half-hearted bun, gave him a quick nod. "Hope you're not afraid of doing real work," she said, tossing him a pair of gloves with dry hands. Because Craig doesn't believe in breaks. From the start, York saw it. The store was short 4 employees. Gwen worked open to close almost every day. The pastry case was half-stocked, customers waited 10 minutes for coffee, and the phone rang endlessly with catering requests no one had time to answer. Craig, meanwhile, spent most of the day either in the back office or on his phone. He barked orders but never helped on the floor. On day 2, York tried to lift a heavy crate of flour and dropped it, spilling it across the loading bay. "Damn it, newbie," Craig snapped. "You've got 2 hands and no brain?" York swallowed the urge to respond. Gwen rushed over, crouched next to him, and started scooping flour into a bag. "Don't let him get to you," she whispered. "He's worse when the district manager's not around." Each day revealed more. Gwen never took lunch. She packed her own granola bars and chewed them behind the register when Craig wasn't looking. When the ovens broke down on a Thursday morning, she called the repairman herself while Craig was out checking inventory, which York discovered meant smoking in the alley. By Friday, York had seen enough to know something was very wrong. But what pushed him over the line happened late that afternoon. A new delivery came in. The driver was 3 hours late and the freezer door jammed. Gwen had been on her feet for 10 hours straight, running the front, prepping dough, and managing 3 high schoolers on their first job. She finally asked Craig for help unloading. His response was loud. "You want help? Try doing your job without whining for once." The bakery went quiet. Even the customers stopped mid-bite. Gwen stood completely still, her cheeks flushed. "I've been doing my job," she said, voice low. "And yours too." Craig stepped closer. "Excuse me," I said. She looked him square in the eye. "I've been covering for your laziness while you hide in that office." Craig laughed, a short, mean sound. "You think you're some kind of martyr? Please, you're lucky I haven't replaced you." York dropped the tray he was carrying, clattered to the floor. Craig turned to him. "You got a problem too, rookie?" York's heart was pounding. His hands were shaking, but he kept his voice even. "No," he said, "but I think I've seen enough." Craig snorted. "Yeah? You gonna write a Yelp review about it?" York reached into his back pocket and pulled out his real ID. He placed it on the counter between them. "York Ellis, owner of this company." Craig's face went pale. Gwen blinked, stunned. One of the high schoolers whispered, "Wait, what?" York turned to Gwen. "You okay?" She nodded slowly, eyes glassy. He looked back at Craig. "We're going to have a long conversation. Right now." Craig opened his mouth, but nothing came out. York turned to the rest of the staff. Everyone, take a break. I'll cover for now. He walked straight into the office with Craig behind him. The door shut, and the whole store held its breath. York closed the office door behind him. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the dull hum of the refrigerator. Craig stood near the desk, arms crossed, chest puffed. You're not seriously going to fire me over a tone of voice, Craig said, eyes narrowed. I've kept this store running with half a crew and no support. York didn't sit. He leaned against the filing cabinet, watching Craig closely. Is that what you think you've been doing? Running the store. Craig took a step forward. You don't get it. You show up for 5 minutes and think you've seen the big picture. I've been here every week, dealing with late shipments, broken equipment, lazy hires. You think Gwen's a saint? She's just good at looking busy. York's stare didn't break. You're not going to spin this. I've seen how she works. I've seen how you don't. Craig scoffed. So you're taking her word over mine? I'm taking my own eyes over your excuses. Craig dropped his arms. All right, maybe I've been direct, but this isn't a daycare. You want results, you push people. You think she's overworked? Everyone's overworked. That's retail. York's tone hardened. No, Craig. That's bad leadership. Craig opened his mouth, then closed it again. York stepped away from the cabinet and walked to the desk, glancing at a schedule pinned to the corkboard. Why are there only 3 people scheduled to open this week? Craig shrugged. Because I can't get anyone to stay. They ghost after 2 shifts or call in sick for a month. Did you ever ask why? Craig didn't answer. York tapped the corner of the desk. You're done here. You'll finish your shift, then you'll hand over your keys to the district lead tomorrow morning. I'll have someone else step in short term. Craig gave a short, bitter laugh. You think pulling me out fixes anything? Good luck finding someone else to put up with this mess. I don't want someone to put up with it. I want someone to fix it. York didn't wait for a response. He opened the door and stepped out into the bakery. The staff had scattered 2 teens restocking napkins behind the coffee bar, Gwen kneeling near the freezer, organizing the shipment. He walked over to her. You all right? He asked. She stood slowly. I think so. Just didn't expect any of that. I didn't either, York said. But I'm glad I saw it. He paused, then added, you shouldn't have to carry all this. She looked down at her hands, rubbing a smudge of flour from her wrist. I just didn't want the place to fall apart. I've been here 4 years. It used to feel like we were baking for people, not just keeping a schedule. York nodded. You feel like that changed? She hesitated. Yeah. After the new hires came in and the old team left, everything got cold. No one trained anyone. No check-ins, no feedback. Just hours and deadlines. He looked around the store at the half-stocked shelves, the scuffed counters, the exhausted faces. Who's been placing the supply orders? I have, Gwen said. Craig kept messing them up. We ran out of cinnamon for 3 days last month. York raised his eyebrows. Did he know you took that over? Probably. He never said anything. Just stopped asking. York glanced back at the office door. He's out. Starting tomorrow. Gwen blinked. Wait. Really? Yes. I'm not leaving this place in his hands another day. She took a breath, then nodded. Okay. York glanced at the clock. You were supposed to be off an hour ago. She exhaled through her nose. I told myself I'd leave when the shipment was put away. I'll do it. Go home. Gwen tilted her head. You sure? He gave her a short nod. Absolutely. As she untied her apron, one of the teens approached York cautiously. Is it true? The boy asked. You're the actual owner? York nodded again. I am. The boy looked stunned. Are we getting fired too? No, York said. But I'll be having a talk with all of you tomorrow. I want to hear what's actually going on here. The teen looked relieved and went back to wiping down tables. York stayed late that night, finishing the restocking, checking the backroom logs, and reviewing the equipment maintenance records. The freezer had been flagged for repairs twice in the last 6 months, but the service orders were never submitted. The ovens had a handwritten note taped to them. Don't open the left side or it resets. He took photos of everything. By the time he locked up, the street outside was quiet. He didn't head straight home. Instead, he drove to the first location his mother had opened, the one she used to run herself before the expansion. The lights were off, but he just sat parked in front, looking at the dim outline of the sign. He remembered being 12, sitting behind the counter on weekends, watching her greet customers by name. She'd known every supplier personally, every employee's birthday. She'd never once raised her voice, but everyone respected her. Somewhere in all the growth, he'd lost that thread. Delegated too much. Trusted numbers more than people. The next morning, York arrived at the Millhaven store at 7. Gwen was already there, prepping batter. "You didn't have to come in early," he said. "I couldn't sleep," she replied. "Figured I'd rather be useful." He stepped behind the counter and washed his hands. "I want to run the store for the next few days." "Myself," he said. "You serious?" "Completely. I want to understand what's broken before I try to fix it." Gwen handed him a mixing bowl. "Then you'd better learn how to make lemon scones. They go fast." By 9, the front line stretched out the door. York worked the register while Gwen managed the ovens and trained the teens on assembling orders. The energy in the room had shifted. Customers noticed. One woman commented that the place felt alive again. Around noon, York sat down with each employee, one by one. He asked questions. He listened. No time limits. The youngest, a 17-year-old named Maya, told him she'd been yelled at her first day for not knowing how to refill the espresso machine. "Did anyone show you how?" York asked. "No. I thought it was automatic." Another, a college student named Daniel, explained that he'd asked for more hours but was told he wasn't ready. Yet he'd never had a performance review or training session. York took notes on everything. By the end of the day, he had a list. Unreported maintenance issues, skipped onboarding, inconsistent scheduling, no access to employee feedback channels, and no recognition system. In the back, Gwen handed him a stack of old menus. "These are from before the last redesign," she said. "Some of the regulars still ask for the pecan loaf. We stopped making it when the supplier changed." York flipped through them. The layout was simpler, but there was personality in it. Hand-drawn icons, a note from his mother on the back. "She used to write a little message every season," Gwen added. "Customers would take them home." York ran a thumb along the edge of the paper. "We'll bring that back," he said. "Not just the loaf. All of it." Gwen gave a small smile. She'd like that. As evening crept in, York stepped outside and made a call to his operations lead. "We're going to pause hiring for store managers," he said. "I want to handpick the next one for Millhaven. And I want to audit all 5 locations." Quietly. There was a pause on the other end. "Everything all right?" the lead asked. "Not yet," York said. "But it will be." The following week, York kept his presence low profile but active. He wore his own name tag, now no disguise this time, and worked shifts alongside the remaining team, blending in not as a boss but as someone willing to carry weight. The goal wasn't to make a spectacle. It was to observe what happened when pressure was removed and support was finally present. By Wednesday, the tension that had hung in the air days before had eased. That didn't mean everything was fixed, it meant people had started breathing again. York was tidying the front register when Daniel approached him during a lull. "I looked up how to recalibrate the espresso machine," Daniel said, holding out a printed guide. "I figured if we're keeping it, we might as well fix the shot consistency." York took the pages. "You pulled this together on your own?" "Yeah. I was tired of guessing. And we've had 3 customers ask if we changed beans. We didn't. It's just been pulling light." York studied the diagrams. "This is solid. You want to be the one to train others on this once we standardize it." Daniel hesitated, then nodded. "I'd like that." York nodded in return. "Then we'll start building that into the barista training. And I'll make sure you get time carved out for it." Daniel returned to the back, and York scanned the space, watching the crew move with more steadiness than they'd had before. Gwen, now clocking regular hours and eating her lunch in peace, was checking the pastry timer. Maya had taken initiative, setting up a small customer notes board near the register, encouraging visitors to write down their favorite items or ideas. The store wasn't perfect, but it was beginning to resemble something closer to what his mother had built, an environment where people weren't just fulfilling tasks, but contributing to something they felt part of. York stepped into the back office, no longer Craig's domain, and called his assistant. "I want to meet with the other store leads. Not managers. The people actually working the floor. Pull their contact info. We'll do it off the schedule, but I want to speak with each of them privately." His assistant asked if there was a specific reason. Yeah. I don't trust the reports I've been getting. I want to see what's actually happening at those other locations. He hung up and turned back to the floor. At closing, Gwen lingered near the front, sipping from a mug of chamomile. She rested on a stool, not rushing to leave. York grabbed a bottle of surface cleaner and started wiping the glass case. You mind if I ask something? She said. Sure. You always plan to come back into the stores like this? He didn't answer right away. No. I should have. But no. She nodded, letting the silence sit for a moment. My brother used to run a pizza place, she said eventually. He said the moment he stopped working Saturday nights, things started slipping. Not right away, just little things. Then one day he walked in and it didn't feel like his anymore. York leaned on the counter. It's not about micromanaging. It's about knowing what the job actually feels like. Gwen looked at him. So what happens now? For this store, I'm not rushing a new manager into the role, he said. I'd rather run it a while longer myself than make the wrong hire again. She looked down at her mug. What if you already know someone who could do it? He met her eyes. You interested? She hesitated. I want to be, but I've never run a whole store. You've been doing most of it already. The only thing you haven't had is the title and the authority. We can fix that. She didn't say yes right away, but she didn't say no either. The next morning, York visited the second store without notice. He arrived before opening and waited by the rear entrance. A barista arrived 10 minutes late, keys shaking as she opened the gate. Inside, the prep area was cluttered and the first tray of muffins hadn't even hit the oven. York didn't announce who he was. He worked the shift quietly, helping where he could, observing. The manager, a woman named Erica, showed up at 9:30 wearing gym clothes and a Bluetooth headset, barely glancing at the floor before retreating to the back. When York offered to help with the till discrepancy that popped up mid-shift, she waved him off. Just write it down. We square it later. He noted that. After the rush, he approached the barista who'd opened. How long have you been working here? He asked. For months, she replied. I used to work at the Millhaven one, but I switched because this location was closer to my classes. You miss it? He asked. She nodded without hesitation. We had structure. Gwen made sure we rotated tasks so no one got stuck doing dishes 3 hours straight. Does that happen here? Every day, she said, then paused. Sorry. I know it's not my place to complain. It's not complaining if it's the truth. By the end of the week, York had visited all 5 stores. 2 were stable, led by long-time employees who had quietly kept things afloat without ever asking for praise. 1 was in worse shape than Millhaven had been. The final location, his flagship, was operating smoothly but lacked warmth. Everything was precise but clinical. No personal touches. No ownership from the team. He compiled notes, scheduling one-on-one meetings with each store's senior staff. He wanted to know what they needed, what was missing, and what they'd change if given the chance. During one such meeting, a shift lead named Tomas, who'd never interacted with York before, shared something unexpected. We used to get handwritten notes from corporate. Not often. Just small things. Great job on the holiday weekend. Or your sales numbers were strong. It meant something. York asked when that stopped. About a year ago. I figured someone got too busy. York wrote that down. Then he set down his pen. That was me, he said. I got too busy. Tomas looked surprised. I didn't know you ever wrote those. I did. My mother used to do it. I tried to keep it going. Then I started thinking spreadsheets were enough. Tomas shrugged. Spreadsheets don't tell us when we're doing something right. Just when we mess up. York nodded slowly. He went back to headquarters that evening and asked to review the internal feedback system. What he found was worse than he expected. The employee suggestion inbox hadn't been checked in over 6 months. A request for improved gloves at the prep stations had been flagged as pending for 97 days. Another note, asking for a gluten-free pastry option, had been marked duplicate and ignored even though the company had no such initiative in progress. He called the HR lead into his office. We're overhauling this, he said. Start with the inbox. Every item gets a response. Then build a tracking system where employees can see progress. The HR lead asked who should be responsible for managing that. I will, York said. Until we build a system that proves it won't be ignored again. He didn't sleep much that week. He started writing again, not memos or directives, but letters. One for each employee who had stepped up while the system failed them. He handwrote them all. No emails, no templates. On Friday morning, he returned to Millhaven with a sealed envelope for Gwen. She opened it, reading silently at the counter. When she finished, she didn't say anything. She folded the letter carefully and placed it in her bag. Then she looked up. "I'll take the store lead position," she said. "But only if I can rewrite the training handbook." York smiled. "That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say." York arrived at the regional staff gathering in a plain button-up and a weathered gray notebook tucked under his arm. The meeting wasn't held in a boardroom or conference hall, but in the back seating area of the second store, the one with the inconsistent prep schedule and a manager who hadn't looked twice at the register in weeks. Folding chairs had been arranged in a loose circle. No podium, no projector. He was the first one there, by design. He moved a few chairs so everyone would be at equal distance, no head of the table. When employees began trickling in, they looked confused. Some carried notepads. A few kept checking their phones, as if unsure they were in the right place. York greeted each by name. No introductions. He'd already memorized the list. When Erica, the manager from the second store, walked in, she paused in the doorway. "You're running this?" "I am," he said. She hesitated before taking a seat. Once everyone was settled, York remained standing. Not to establish authority, but to move around as he spoke. "I asked you here because I've come to realize something. We've been running this company like a machine. Clean processes, efficient systems, low friction. But somewhere in all that, we stopped asking if the machine was actually working for the people inside it." A few staff exchanged glances. One barista, a man named Luis from the flagship store, leaned forward slightly. "So we're not in trouble?" "No," York said. "You're here because I want to know what's keeping you from doing your best work. Not what the numbers say. What you say." He pulled a chair into the circle and sat. "I'm not interested in fixing symptoms. I'm interested in what's underneath." No one spoke at first. Then a woman from the fourth location cleared her throat. "Our scheduling app doesn't let us swap shifts without manager approval. But half the time, our manager doesn't respond. So we end up scrambling to cover each other unofficially." York nodded. "Who here has the same problem?" For hands went up. "That's a fixable system issue. But it also tells me something about responsiveness, which is a people issue." "Noted." Luis spoke next. "I've been at the flagship store 2 years. We're never short on supplies, but we're not allowed to change the playlist or adjust the seating. Even when customers complain. It's like we're managing a showroom, not a cafe." Another voice chimed in. "We used to write the daily chalkboard messages ourselves. Now it's pulled from a template. One time it said Happy Arbor Day in October and no one noticed for 3 days." Laughter broke out, brief but real. York wrote in his notebook without looking up. When the group quieted, he looked around. Who here has ever pitched an idea and never heard back? Every hand went up. He set his pen down. "I want to restructure how ideas move through this business. Right now, they go up, stall, and disappear. Starting next month, we're launching a rolling forum. Every store sends one idea per week, doesn't matter how big or small. We'll rotate reviewers from the floor staff, not just corporate. You'll vote on what gets tested." Erica leaned back in her chair. "And who decides if something becomes permanent?" "You do," York said. "If it works and improves the experience for both teams and customers, we adopt it system-wide. If it doesn't, we learn and move on." But the days of suggestion boxes gathering dust are over. One of the shift leads, Janelle, raised her hand. "Are we allowed to propose changes to how we train new hires?" "Not only allowed," York said. "Expected." She nodded, thoughtful. York closed the notebook. "There's another thing." He met eyes with each of them before continuing. "I've made a mistake these last few years. I stopped visiting the stores. I stopped listening with my own ears. That won't happen again." Luis asked, "So what does that look like?" "It means I work 1 shift per week at a different store, unannounced. Not to evaluate, to understand. I'll mop floors, take orders, whatever's needed. No clipboard. No special treatment." Erica crossed her arms. "So you're just another name on the schedule now?" "I'm someone who shares responsibility for how this place runs." That's more than a name. No one replied immediately, but the posture in the room shifted. Shoulders eased. I stayed up. After the meeting, York stayed to talk one-on-one with anyone who lingered. Janelle pulled him aside near the pastry rack. I didn't think you'd remember my name, she said. I remember the people who show up when others don't. You've closed 17 nights in a row. She tilted her head. You counted. I read every time card from the last quarter. Her expression was unreadable for a moment. Then she said, I've got a proposal for a new closing checklist. The current one skips sanitation steps that end up costing us in the morning. Send it to me directly. I'll preview it before the next store lead call. She nodded once, then walked off. Later that week, York met with the company's vendor liaison. The supplier who'd caused the seasonal ingredient shortage had been late on shipments 6 out of the last 10 weeks. York terminated the contract and brought in a local provider Gwen had recommended. Their prices were slightly higher, but the quality was better and delivery was consistent. When the first batch of pecans arrived, York drove them to Millhaven himself. Gwen was rolling out dough when he walked in. You're early, she said. I brought something. She turned and saw the labeled boxes. Her face lit up in a way he hadn't seen before. Real ones. Straight from South County orchards. Same farm my mother used. She walked over and opened a box, picking up a pecan and turning it over in her fingers. These are beautiful, she said. York leaned against the prep table. I want the old pecan loaf recipe on the menu starting next week. We'll print a run of the classic seasonal menus. Your call on the design. Gwen looked at him. You serious? Completely. She didn't say anything else. She just got to work. By Monday, the new menus were in place. The pecan loaf sold out before noon. Customers asked if it was a special, and Gwen told them, nope, just something we lost and brought back. The mood in the store continued to shift. Staff started showing up 10 minutes early without being asked. Daniel started mentoring Maya without prompting. Gwen began carving out blocks of time to train new hires using a guide she'd built herself. It was practical, direct, and full of real examples from the floor. York sat in on one session, quietly observing. Afterward, he asked Maya how it felt compared to her first week. I didn't cry this time, she said. Then she laughed. That's a win. York smiled. Big one. As the month closed, sales at Millhaven rose by 18%. Customer complaints dropped to 0. But more important than that, the break room had started to fill with small things again. Handwritten notes, stickers on the fridge, a shared playlist scribbled on the whiteboard. It didn't look like a corporation anymore. It looked like a place people wanted to be. York stood near the back register one evening, watching the last customers filter out. Gwen was locking up, humming something tuneless under her breath. He turned to her. You ever think about expanding again? He asked. She looked at him. You ready for that? He considered the question. No, but I'm willing to grow if the roots are healthy. She smiled faintly. Then maybe. They went back to sweeping the floor. No ceremony. No grand finale. Just a quiet end to a day that worked the way it was supposed to. And for the first time in a long while, York didn't feel like he was running a business from behind a desk. He felt like he was part of something worth protecting. York stepped into the training session quietly, taking a spot near the back wall. The group seated around the narrow folding table didn't notice him at first, an encouraging sign. They were focused. Gwen was leading the session, flipping through a laminated binder she'd assembled from scratch. Each page had a photo of real workspace setups, not stock images. Her voice was steady, pacing deliberate. She pointed to a page on pastry rotation schedules. If you prep the fillings too early and don't label the containers, you're basically throwing hours into the trash. That's how we ended up with 2 batches of spoiled cranberry compote last winter. Never again. The trainees jotted notes. One of them, a tall man with tattooed forearms and flour on his shoes, raised a hand. What's the rule for swapping out if someone calls out last minute? Gwen didn't hesitate. You text the team group chat and then call me. Not Craig. Not whoever's on shift. Me. I'll handle it. You don't need to panic. York watched the way the trainees responded. No one looked unsure. No one looked like they were waiting for a test. It felt like they were being invited into something, not just hired. When the session ended, Gwen caught his eye. She raised a brow, tilting her head slightly toward the hallway. York followed her out to the narrow corridor behind the prep area. Wasn't expecting you today, she said, pulling her apron loose. I like to see things when they're not staged, York said. She folded the apron over her arm. They're picking it up fast. That's Anton, the one who asked about shift cover. He used to work in a kitchen that got raided for wage violations. Came in a little skeptical. He'll come around, York said. You're running a tighter operation than most department leads I've seen. Gwen leaned against the wall, arms crossed. I've been thinking about backfilling the shift lead role. We keep rotating people through it, and it's too much churn. I want someone consistent. Who do you have in mind? She hesitated. Daniel. York nodded slowly. He ready. He's not polished, she said. But he's reliable. He's been staying after hours helping Maya with closeouts. And he's the one who started the new prep logs I showed you. You think the crew will follow him? They already do, she said. They just don't know it yet. Then promote him, York said. Effective next schedule. And give him a raise. Gwen gave a short nod. Thanks. York reached for the door. I've got to head to the third store. There's some cleanup to do there. She didn't ask what kind. He left through the back exit and drove across town, arriving just before the midday lull. The third store had been running on autopilot for weeks. After Craig's departure, the assistant manager had stepped in temporarily, but no one had been given long-term authority. The result was a slow slide into disarray. The storefront windows were streaked with dried condensation. The pastry case was sparsely filled with a few croissants laid out haphazardly like an afterthought. Inside, the energy was flat. Employees moved without urgency. A customer stood waiting at the counter while the barista filled a mop bucket. York didn't speak right away. He entered, stood at the register, and waited to be acknowledged. When the barista finally looked up, she froze for a split second, then straightened. Sorry. Didn't see you come in. I'm not here for coffee, York said. The woman, whose name tag read Sasha, blinked. Are you? I'm the owner, yes, he said. I want to talk to whoever's overseeing the store today. Sasha disappeared into the back. A minute later, a man in his early 30s stepped out, adjusting his headset and wiping his hands on his apron. Hi, Mr. Ellis. I'm Caleb, the assistant manager. York gave a small nod. Walk with me. They stepped outside and stood near the side alley away from traffic. You've been holding things together since Craig left, York said. Caleb nodded carefully. Trying to. We've been running with one less opener and no dedicated stock lead. I've been covering both. You've kept it functional, York said. But the team's checked out. Caleb looked at the pavement. Yeah. Why? He didn't answer immediately. They don't trust that anything they do will matter. They keep asking if we're getting a new manager, if hours are going to be cut. I don't have answers. So they stopped trying. York crossed his arms. Do you want to lead this store? Caleb looked surprised. I don't know. That's not a no. I can handle logistics, Caleb said. But I've never been the person people rally around. Neither was I at first. Caleb met his eyes. You think I could grow into it? I think you already have part of it, York said. The rest can be taught, if you're willing to learn. Caleb nodded slowly. Then I want to try. Good. You'll shadow Gwen for 3 weekends. Then we'll review. In the meantime, I want the store reset. Deep clean. Reorganize. Throw out anything that hasn't moved in a week. Caleb nodded again, this time with more certainty. Back at headquarters, York gathered the corporate leads for a quiet meeting. He didn't call it a restructuring. He didn't pass out memos. He simply asked questions. How often do we communicate store-level wins to our suppliers? How do we measure morale without waiting for people to quit? What's the last policy we scrapped because it didn't serve the floor? The room was silent for a moment. His operations lead, a woman named Karen, cleared her throat. We haven't had a system for that. We've had systems for everything else. Then we're overdue, York said. I want a rotating panel made up of floor staff, not just regional managers. One from each store. They'll meet quarterly with us, and their feedback will drive policy, not just get filed. Another lead asked who would chair the panel. No one, York said. It'll rotate. The goal isn't hierarchy. It's insight. Later that week, he returned to the 4th store, the only one that had been flagged for customer complaints about speed. The manager, a reserved man named Victor, kept the space immaculate but rarely engaged with the team. York didn't schedule a meeting. He showed up during peak hours and worked the line. When the shift ended, he approached Victor by the back sink. "You care about quality," York said. Victor straightened slightly. "Yes, I do. But your team's tense," York added. "They're afraid to improvise." Victor opened a drawer and pulled out a clipboard. "I've been tracking waste. We've cut it by 30% in 3 months. "That's commendable," York said. "But what's the cost?" Victor didn't respond. York placed a hand on the counter. "Let them experiment with 1 new item per week. Something not on the menu. Give them room to create, not just comply." Victor nodded slowly. "I'll try." "Not try," York said. "Just listen." When York left the store, he didn't feel triumphant. He felt grounded. This was the real work. Not the branding. Not the growth charts. But the slow, deliberate unwinding of bad habits. Back at Millhaven, Daniel approached Gwen near the end of his shift. "I've been thinking about rotating the closing tasks," he said. "Maya's been stuck sweeping every night." "Write up a new rotation list," Gwen said. "We'll test it for a week." Daniel looked surprised. "Just like that. You're the lead now," she said. "Start acting like it." He smiled and walked off. Gwen turned and caught sight of York watching. "You're comfortable letting go," she said. "I'm learning how." She nodded. Outside, dusk settled over the storefronts. The smell of warm pastry drifted through the air, and inside, laughter bubbled up near the espresso bar. The business wasn't perfect, but it was moving. And this time it was moving in the right direction.